Do you ever catch yourself apologizing even though you didn't do anything wrong because you're just trying to avoid conflict? Or maybe you have a tendency to shut down when things get tense. Or it's possible that you start overanalyzing everything. Like you want to understand it from every possible angle and you want to try to predict what's coming next. If you saw yourself in any of those possible responses and thought, oh my God, why am I like this? There's a very good reason. So I'm going to show you how the four primal stress responses shape your reactions in relationships and what you can actually do to shift toward healthy patterns. Let's start with what a stress response actually is. So, you hear the term nervous system thrown around a lot on the internet, but people don't usually explain what it is, and it matters here. So, let me briefly talk about it. In the simplest terms, your nervous system is your body's built in alarm and communication network. We have a complicated system of nerve cells throughout our bodies that scan for danger and send messages that signal to us in an unconscious way. They're signaling to the body what to do in situations we might sense to be dangerous. So when your system senses a threat, it activates one of the four F responses. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And these reactions helped our ancestors survive life-threatening danger, like a wild animal about to attack you. What do you do in that situation? You don't have time to think. Your body just has to react. Do you play dead? Do you run? Do you fight? What's going to get you out of this alive? And that's why these are so powerful. They are very helpful at surviving dangerous situations. But in modern life, these stress responses often get triggered by non-life threatening situations like emotional or relational stress. So that could be someone's tone of voice. It could be radio silence from someone you're dating and you're sensing that they're about to abandon you. It could even be a memory that feels unsafe. If this is resonating with you, I'm sorry, but you kind of found yourself in the right place. My name is Charlotte, and I help people who are craving connection stop abandoning themselves to get it. And if you find yourself here, there's a chance you grew up in an unsafe or unpredictable environment. Same. People who grow up in that sort of chaos often learn to survive by overusing one or two of the four F responses. And over time, these become default habits. It's almost like an operating system. And people with a healthy and flexible response repertoire, they're not habitually over relying on one or two of the four F responses. They're able to go through them appropriately, kind of like a round robin. It's a carousel, and they can pick and choose what they need in that moment. Now, like I said, there are healthy stress responses. I don't want you to think all of these are always bad at all times. They're actually very smart and helpful. Sometimes we need to react defensively because we're actually in danger. Like, someone is violating a social norm or saying weird things to you, and you're alone with them, and you start to sense that they might do something to harm you. Every woman has had that experience. The problem isn't the stress response itself, but it turns into a problem when that pattern, that response becomes rigid and automatic. We become over reliant on one response rather than having access to the helpfulness of all four. And I'll talk about that more later in the video. But the point of this video is to make you aware of what your stress responses might be and whether you are defaulting to one or two of them in an unconscious way that is harming your relationships. And I say this constantly, awareness is always the first step to changing anything in your life. You have to be aware of what you're doing. And most of the time, we're not aware of it. I'm about to explain the four Fs to you, but if you're curious to know which of the four Fs you fall into, you can take a quiz I made if you sign up for my newsletter. It's the first link in the description. It will help give you a breakdown of how much you depend on each four F type. My friend Cliff very generously helped me put this quiz together because all of these quiz platforms want a lot of money every month to host these quizzes. So please tell Cliff thank you in the comments. Also, if you're into history, check out his YouTube channel. I'll link it in the description. Thank you, Cliff. Everyone say thank you, Cliff. I really want to give you guys more quizzes. I think that awareness is the first step. So I want to give you those tools for free. And Cliff has helped make it more affordable. So everyone write, thank you, Cliff, in the comments. Thanks, Cliff. The other thing I want you to drill into your little noggin is this is not a diagnosis, okay? This is not an identity. You are not stuck with this problem. You're not someone that needs to be fixed. These are symptoms of something deeper that's going on within you. It's not a fixed personality trait. You can work on this and you can make these unconscious reactions conscious. It is possible, and I want you to have hope of that. Do not resign yourself to being a fawner or a fleer or a fighter or whatever you end up identifying with, okay? Please do not take these as an identity. It will only keep you stuck. And that goes for literally everything at all times, always. Any diagnosis you get, any quiz you take, anything, anxious attachment, avoidant, anything. It is just a cluster of symptoms. It is not who you are. Okay, disclaimer over. Let me now read you for filth and explain the 4Fs. They kind of exist on a spectrum, and you will probably identify with more than one. The 4Fs, like I said, are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. I typically like to think about things as a 2x2 matrix. It's my favorite thing ever. I will make so many 2x2 matrices. I have so many more to show you guys. But I tried really hard for this one, and it doesn't work because Fawn is weird. Fawn is just a weird one, and we'll get to it in a second. I'll talk about that later. But here is how I think is the most helpful way to think about this. Fight and fawn are opposites of one another, and flight and freeze are opposites of one another. What all 4 of these stress responses have in common is, when it comes to relationships specifically, is that the people who learn to respond in unhealthy ways by over-relying on one of them, at some point in their lives, they learned they can only depend on themselves and not other people around them. It's a radical self-reliance when they feel unsafe forming relationships. So that if this trauma, if this experience happened as a child, as adults, they rely on old protective patterns that they ingrained in them as intuitively as children. It's almost like the operating system again. Like, it was installed into us without us realizing what we were doing. We trained ourselves to react in this way. And when we find ourselves in emotionally familiar situations, the operating system kicks in. You can override the operating system, but it takes awareness that it's there in the first place, and that's what most people struggle to notice. So that's what this video is for. Let's start with flight and freeze. Flight types engage in hyperactivity. They are constantly doing, they're constantly overthinking, because their default operating system is to avoid through action. They have this internal voice telling them, no one will help me. I have to stay ahead of the danger, and I have to be in constant motion. That is what will keep me safe. Now, one thing to recognize is all of these adaptive behaviors lead to some sort of emotional cost. In flight's case, that would be exhaustion, it would be anxiety, an unwillingness to allow yourself to rest. And a big one is actually the inability to make decisions quickly or even at all in some cases. One of the most common things I see with flight types is that they get stuck in their head a lot. They are overly analytical. And the reason that this is a flight response is because they're avoiding the feelings by analyzing them. They're intellectualizing, and they're trying to get ahead of them and predict the future. They think that if they can predict someone else's behavior by overanalyzing what they're seeing, they will be safe because they're ahead of it. Okay, this might be a call out, but I also think that people who are really into self-improvement content tend to be flight types or have that as their secondary response. Flight type is my secondary response, full disclosure. And I also see the flight tendencies in workaholics because they're just pouring themselves into work. They're always busy. They're always moving. There's an obsessiveness involved in flight types to the point where they may appear to have or even be diagnosed with OCD. And flight types usually struggle with perfectionism. They have an inner critic that tells them that they have to be perfect in order to connect with someone, and they have to be perfect to be safe around other people. And they also tend to develop an outer critic that can lead them to becoming impatient with people who seem I don't know, they might be slower than them. Maybe they don't meet their standards in some way. I see it with cleanliness a lot or something like that, which can lead them to being critical or judgmental of other people. Their perfectionistic standards for themselves can impede in their relationships in that way. Essentially, they stay busy all of the time to avoid their feelings. They do not want to get triggered by a deeper relating, like an actual connection. They want to keep things at arm's length. Sometimes they're working obsessively to perfect themselves, and they hope that this allows them to become worthy enough of love. They feel like they're just not good enough yet, and they have a lot of difficulty showing anything but this perfect persona to other people in their life, which also gets in the way of connecting with people in a way that matters. Freeze types, on the other hand, they're immobilized. They are in like the fetal position. They think if I disappear, I'll be safe. I think of freeze types as people who learn to play dead in their real life. They doubt their ability to act or influence outcomes. So they have adapted their behavior to go numb and dissociate and be passive. So while the flight type feels like if they're in constant motion, they get to be safe, the freeze type has learned that if I shut down, I won't get hurt. At the core of this for freeze types is a learned helplessness. So their inner critic tells them, nothing and no one can help me. So why bother trying? It's pointless. They can also be outwardly pessimistic about other people or just people generally. They may justify this worldview by saying something like, everyone disappoints me anyway. It's best to just stay away from people. So isolation is way safer to them than being seen. So freeze types may hide away in their homes, and they might be fully convinced that the world of relationships holds nothing for them. There's no hope out there to meet people that they might connect with. It's just hopeless. I do sometimes see this in my comment section. I'll see people talking about how dating is hopeless, I don't leave my house, those sorts of things. Sometimes I will see freeze types gravitate towards online relationships if they haven't been totally turned off by the idea of relationships with other people, but they will likely be afraid to meet these online connections in real life. The fact that they were online relationships creates the distance that allows the freeze tendency in them to feel safe. But they typically want as little in-person contact as possible. And that, my friends, may be one of the reasons why we have so many people on dating apps that don't actually want to meet up. I don't know, it's just a theory. I don't know how to test it. The other thing about freeze types is that they may seek comfort in dissociating. So that means they could be sleeping a lot. They may be daydreaming, watching TV, or scrolling, or playing video games. Basically, they're retreating into themselves, and they have a deep unconscious belief that people and danger are the same thing. Like people equals danger. They usually have pretty bad social anxiety, and sometimes they just completely give up on relating to others outside of fantasy. Let's go to the next spectrum, which is fight and fawn. So fight leans into dominance and intimidation tactics in order to feel safe, whereas fawn types placate. They use appeasement, compliance, they erase themselves and just focus on the needs of the other person in order to control any conflict that they're sensing and try to nip it in the bud. So you see how they're opposites? One is trying to overpower, the other's trying to give in. Fight types protect themselves through an overpowering control. They think, if I'm strong, no one can hurt me. No one will protect me, so I must dominate others or stay in control of the situation and the relationship in order to be safe. When they're triggered, they might snap at someone, they might lecture them or give them an ultimatum, like kind of like my way or the highway, that sort of thing. It's all about trying to protect themselves from feeling powerless. Fight types are unconsciously driven by the belief that power and dominance can create safety. And they think that they can prevent abandonment if they control the people around them. My major source for this video is this book by Pete Walker. It's called Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. I highly recommend it for anyone who relates to my channel. You may find yourself in the pages of this book. He talks about how flight types were frequently allowed to imitate the bullying of a narcissistic parent when they were a child. And that's sort of how they learn these behaviors. So they developed a habitual fight response because that's how their parents acted. And a lot of fight types start out as an older sibling who was bullied by their parents. And then they went on to overpower their younger siblings like they saw their parents overpower them as kids. They learned to respond to their feelings of abandonment with anger because that was what was modeled to them. And many of them use contempt, rage, disgust, disappointment, shame, any of those sorts of emotions, high activation emotions, to get others to do what they want them to do. And so because of that, they can come off as somewhat self-involved and even a little narcissistic, as they're centering themselves in every fight. They're like, this is what I need, and you need to do what I say. They're treating others as if the other person is an extension of them, and that other person has to do what they want in order for the fight type to feel safe. Are these people full-blown narcissists? They can be in some situations, absolutely. But in others, they may just come off as having narcissistic tendencies because of their tendency to overpower people and to center themselves in conflicts. Fawn types, on the other hand, protect themselves by collapsing into themselves and appeasing others. So fawn types think, if I keep you happy, I'll be safe. If you're okay with me, I'm safe. It's the exact opposite of how fight types think. Both the fight type and the fawn type believe no one else is looking out for me. I have to look out for myself, but they have come to way different methods of making that happen. You can almost think of the fawn type as they're preempting some sort of conflict. So you have to manage everyone else's emotions because I need to make sure what's going to happen. I can anticipate anything and I can make it better by placating. The fawn type's inner critic says to them, you're only lovable if you're useful. So they become hyper attuned to others' feelings and they learn to erase their own needs in order to make sure they're keeping the peace. The fawn type is actually the most relationally focused of the three types. Remember when I said the 2x2 matrix didn't work with this? And this is why. The fawn type is the problem because it wasn't that simple. I didn't go into these details earlier in the video. This is for the hardcore people who got to this point. So thank you very much. I'm so glad you're here. I love you. Thank you. There are two branches of autonomic nervous system. There's the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system. The sympathetic system pushes you to stay engaged. So it's confronting the threat and fleeing the threat. That's what fight and flight responses are activating. The parasympathetic system pulls you into submission or collapse. So that's the freeze response. It's avoiding detection or numbing pain, something like that. You are collapsing. The fawn response is unique because it has both systems active at the same time. A fawner can appear very calm, very pleasant. Externally, they're very warm, but internally, they're stressed out. So they're frozen, but on high alert at the same time. And your body is simultaneously hitting the gas and the brake with the fawn type. So they're trying to seek safety by merging with the desires and the needs and the demands of other people around them. And they act as if they believe that the price of admission to any relationship is to forfeit all of their own needs. They don't get any preferences. They don't get boundaries in relationships if they want to be accepted by another person. And so they essentially disenfranchise themselves because they learned at some point in their lives that if they abandoned anything they could ever need from themselves or for themselves, then they felt safe around other people. And if this sounds like people pleasing or codependency, yeah, that's basically what it is. Though Ingrid Clayton wrote a book called Fawning, which I've also used for these notes, that I highly recommend. Clayton does take issue with those words because she says they imply choice to some extent, whereas with a true fawner habitual stress response, you're doing it unconsciously. Frequently, you don't even know where your personality ends and fawning begins. That was a really big problem for me when I was in the beginning of my journey. I'm like, who am I without this personality trait? But it's not a personality trait, it's a stress response. Speaking of personality, sometimes the fawn type will be a little jokester like they'll be like a court jester, and they'll only be able to feel safe if everyone around them is laughing and happy and there's no sense of tension. I think that's something I see in men a lot, but obviously women have that tendency as well. And like I said, I'm a fawn type. That's my default with the secondary flight response. And that's who I make videos for. This channel is for fawn types with a sub flight type. It's very specific, actually. And obviously, you can get something out of my videos still if you're not those types. But that's kind of who I'm thinking about when I make these videos. And something I've realized in my life is I attract a lot of fight type friends. It's so interesting. And when you guys say, I stood up to my friend and I said no, or I stopped reaching out first and they just never talked to me again. I'm like, babe, that was either a freeze type who you have been pulling out into the world, or it's a fight type and you actually like set a boundary with them and said no to them and they were done. It wasn't you. It wasn't you. You have some stuff to work on, but it's not a reflection of your character that they stopped reaching out because you said no. It's because they're a fight type. So keep that in mind. I don't have any proof of this, but it seems like fight and fawn types tend to find each other. If you're one of those people who thinks everyone's a narcissist, like you feel like everyone you meet has narcissistic tendencies, there's a chance you have fawn type tendencies and you're attracting a lot of fight types to you. That's why you think everyone's a narcissist, because fight types look for people with poor boundaries and fawns have very poor boundaries. In this video about why you always care more than your friends, I actually lay out 3 different archetypes that each sort of loosely correlate to one of the 4 Fs. I just was getting less clinical about it because those videos do better, full disclosure. And so the prover is a fawn type. The miscommunicator can either be freeze or like flight type, and then the controller is a fight type. So those were all like, you're leaning too far into one of your 4F responses. Your friends are sensing it and they're like responding in a different way than, like, they're pushing back on this stress response that you're having, because people really can sense when you are being overbearing or when you are being over accommodating. It freaks people out. And it's not actually very nice to be over accommodating if you're a fawner. It's really not. It's uncomfortable for people. They're like, what is the agenda? Why is this person acting this way? It freaks them out. Their hair is standing up on the back of their neck. You think you're being nice, but you're being controlling. And that's a problem in relationships that people may not be able to put their finger on. They may not be able to articulate why they feel weird, but they feel it. And it's definitely something I had to learn the hard way. Now that I have made a lot of strides in my fawning, I'm no longer a fawner in most areas of my life. I'm able to set boundaries. I'm able to see when someone else is fawning, and I feel what these other people have been feeling my whole life. I'm like, no wonder people didn't want me around. This makes so much sense. I was freaking them out. And which is kind of a relief, because it was behavior that wasn't me. It's not me. It's not who I am. It's just how I was acting. I was sending off a signal I was not aware of. And it's just such a relief to have that awareness and to be doing the work to actually catch yourself when you start to fall into these operating systems, these habitual patterns that you've picked up in your life. Each of the 4 Fs have positive attributes, and I think it's worth going through that now, because what you eventually want to get to is being able to sample from this like 4F response tray in times of stress. Like, you may have a tendency to default to one, but if you're aware of it and then you think about the repertoire available to you, you can actually decide like, oh, I don't have to fawn in this moment. I can assert myself just like a fight type would, but I can do it in a healthy way. So people with positive fight attributes, they're assertive. They can hold boundaries. They have a lot of courage. They can show leadership. So easy access to the fight response will allow you to assert yourself in an appropriate way. It makes it so that you're not a doormat. You are willing to say, hey, no, I'm right here and you're kind of wrong, and I would really appreciate it if we could come to some sort of resolution that works for both of us. It's not just rolling over and playing dead like a fawn would. People with positive fawn responses are very good at showing love and service. They can find compromise very easily. They're very good listeners. They are interested in fairness and they're natural peacekeepers. So a person with a healthy fawn response is able to listen and help and compromise as needed in a way that's not begging or for acceptance or like just like a crumb. And because they also have access to their fight response, they can express their needs and assert themselves and their point of view whenever that's necessary as well. So it's basically allowing for collaboration in a healthy way rather than just giving up on themselves and getting walked all over by the other person, as fawns tend to have happen to them. Some positive attributes for flight types. They are very good at healthy disengagement. They can retreat when it's strategic. Flight types also tend to be very resourceful and have a lot of perseverance. So if you have the appropriate flight instinct, it will help you stand down from a confrontation that may actually put you in more danger. So it's the instinct to take a step back. If you have access to a healthy freeze response, I sort of think about it, instead of playing dead, you're just camouflage. Like you're waiting for the right moment to pop up. So you're not paralyzed entirely. You're just buying time to assess the danger, to decide which of the 4 responses is the best option in that situation. And who knows, it may still be freeze, but you have awareness of it now. Freeze types are able to be mindful. They have a calm presence about them, and they tend to be observant and aware because they're not trying to draw attention to themselves. So instead of like getting attention, they're observing the people around them. Okay, now I'm going to rapid fire the healing here because I feel like this video is getting too long. So here are some quick tips for each type to help them get in touch with other responses. For fight types, you need to first think about how the other person's feeling. What is the other person's perspective? Notice your impact and pay attention to moments where you may be coming off as dismissive or condescending. That defensiveness often pushes people away and recreates the very disconnection that you're afraid of. And it's ironic because all of these habitual leaning on one of these types is going to lead to disconnection. It may help to take a step back before reacting. When you feel that urge to correct someone in your life or to criticize them or shame them or give them an ultimatum, take a brief time out. Just breathe for a second, wait, pause, delay. Ask yourself, am I trying to be correct in this moment? Or am I trying to bring this person closer to me? Because usually you can only pick one. You can only have one goal. You might be right and they might be wrong, but if you start a fight with them, they're not going to see it that way. They're going to see it as you bullying them. And my last tip for fight types is just imagine how the other person's feeling in this moment. If you're not a fight type, that's going to sound ridiculous, but the thing fight types need to think about is the other person's perspective. It is empathy, because when you go tunnel vision, your default programming is to feel like your feelings are the only ones that matter. But whenever you have a conflict, both people's feelings matter. So that's going to help you not overstep in that situation. For flight types, the first step is pausing. When you catch yourself running from discomfort, just stop for a minute, for a few minutes, sit still, breathe, and go inward into your body. Get in touch with your body. You don't have to fix anything right now. You can take a minute. One of the things that flight types really struggle with is embodiment, is getting in touch with yourself, is allowing yourself to feel your feelings, because underneath that busyness is usually a feeling you're avoiding. And it could be any feeling. It could be sadness, it could be fear. It's usually like an unpleasant feeling. And you're trying to run away from it by intellectualizing it or by just being too busy that you don't have to deal with it. You don't have time to deal with it. You have other things to do. After pausing, a question you can ask yourself is, what actually matters the most right now? Am I distracting myself? Am I avoiding something? When you slow down, it allows your priorities to lead you with the right decision instead of allowing panic to make the next choice of what you do. So just be more mindful instead of constantly going. And you'll also probably have a tendency to overanalyze. What you need to practice is letting it go. you need to ask yourself, why does this matter? So that guy you dated like 4 years ago is checking your Instagram story a lot randomly lately, and you are over analyzing the crap out of it. Why? What are you avoiding? Do you want to go back to dating him? No, you're just distracting yourself at the core of it. So just keep coming back to, let it go. This doesn't matter. This is a distraction. Let it go. That's for the over analyzing. Now, I don't want to give people advice about OCD. That's not my place. I'm not any licensed sort of anything. But if you don't have OCD, but you do have a tendency to get distracted by things that logically don't matter, but you just like have this perfectionistic part of you, like you may be like obsessively rearranging the PowerPoint, or just like working on something and tweaking one thing, or cleaning the house, and you're refusing to stop cleaning this one area. Like, you have to ask yourself, will this make a difference at all? Is this moving the needle forward? If you lean freeze type, start with awareness that you are blinking out or zoning out or engaging in what you think might be a freeze tendency. Just notice it and call it out. I'm starting to freeze right now. I'm feeling something that I can't recognize. I'm burrowing into myself. I'm playing dead right now. Whatever term resonates with you. Bring the awareness back to your conscious brain. That's the first step. Phrase types, I also recommend working on small connections. And I'll let you decide what small means. It could be connecting with a pet. It could be texting someone in your life, texting them first. It could be going out to a coffee shop or sitting on a park bench and just being around people. You don't have to talk to anybody. Just sit there and not be in your house. And it sort of gets you to, like, it's like training wheels for exposure to people without having to connect with people directly. So that's like a really good first step. The freeze type should also make a point to go outside if they've been indoors a lot and isolating a lot. You also should probably work on embodiment. That's something freeze and flight types have in common. Move your body, simple movement, just stretching. You can even just shake it out, just breathe more slowly, do box breathing. All of that can really help to just sort of wake your system up, because that is what you need. You need to mobilize yourself. Find ways to push yourself forward. My camera shut down. I got too hot. I had to sit here for about 10 minutes waiting for my camera to cool down. Where was I? For the freeze types, you just have to remember that your default is to be immobile and to stay away from people. Do what you can to mobilize yourself. That could be gamifying it. It could be allowing yourself to get treats that you normally don't get. Like, go out to get a coffee if you usually make it at home. Try to just get outside where people exist, not the internet. The internet doesn't count. I'm sorry, there's still too much distance. Though you can incrementally increase connection with someone over the internet. So if you usually have someone you text a lot, try to get on a phone with them. Or if you have someone you talk on the phone with, try to get on a video call with them. You will eventually work to being actually in person with somebody, maybe one day. That's the goal. For fawn types, notice when you're tuned entirely to someone else's needs. So what I like to ask myself is, what do I feel right now? What do I need right now? What do I want right now? These are the questions that fawn types refuse to ask themselves. And when you are overly preoccupied by someone else's needs, you need to wait and ask yourself, what do I want? So this is a situation where, I don't know, maybe you are planning a get together with a friend. You're trying to find a place to meet up. You think about their preferences. You're thinking about everything they need, but you're not actually considering what you want. Like, maybe you're thinking about whether they have dietary restrictions or what cuisines they tend to like, but you're not actually asking yourself if you want to go there. Or maybe you're thinking about what's convenient for them to travel to, and you're not thinking about what's convenient for both of you to travel to. So try to incorporate yourself when you are actually attuning to other people. You don't have to become selfish. I think a lot of fawners are very afraid of being seen as selfish. That's not what I'm saying. But there is mutuality. There is a middle ground. You can find a place to meet up, if we're sticking with that example, where you are both able to find stuff you like and also get there in a reasonable way. Like it's reasonably convenient for both of you. It is possible. You just have to consider yourself, which is something you have not done in a while. My other tip for fawners is to share your inner world with people. Let trusted people in your life know your real opinions and your needs. So, like, speaking up in that sense will help build a muscle that you have allowed to atrophy, because you just sort of listen, you just let other people talk at you, you just agree with everything they say. The next step after that, after sharing your opinion, would be to disagree with somebody. If someone says that, I don't know, it can be something low stakes. It doesn't have to be something big like politics or something like that. If someone says, "Oh, I didn't really like that movie," you can say, "Oh, I actually really liked it." It's low stakes. It's a disagreement, but it's not going to end your world, I promise. But sometimes fawners are just so afraid of any and all conflict that they will lie and say that they didn't like something even though they did, or they liked something even though they didn't. So try to just be truthful without thinking about how this other person's going to receive you. And of course, the biggest thing for fawners is to practice saying no. You can start small, start by saying no to little things with people you're close to, with people you feel like are always going to be there. And the no can be very tiny. It can be like, "Here, do you want seconds?" "No, I'm good. I'm good." Just instead of just taking it, just say no. And then you work your way up, like saying no to hanging out, saying no to like a, do you want to go to this restaurant? "No, I don't like that place. I'd rather go here." Veto something. And I know it's terrifying because you feel like that other person is going to abandon you. And you have to remember, it's not normal to abandon someone for saying no. Okay. So if someone does put their foot down and say, like, "Oh, that's unreasonable, you shouldn't say no to me ever," that's a crazy relationship already. And maybe you shouldn't be in it. Maybe that other person has stuff they have to deal with too. Okay. So I want you to stop internalizing every single problem. Fawners think that they are always the problem no matter what. And that is detrimental to all of their relationships because they don't see when they're being mistreated. If you identified with the fawn type, you should check out this video next about how to stop people pleasing once and for all. It will change your life once you figure it out, I promise. Let me know what you scored on the quiz down below. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Cliff, for making the quiz. Everyone thank Cliff in the comments. Thank you, Cliff. Bye.